in a successful way about our system of government, how to do it. And it was a really good conference. Some of you were there. And I thought it was useful and wonderful. And today, we're going to talk about how to get schools in every state going in teaching about this, about our form of government and teaching the kids. Now, every state has its own problems. I come from a state where they are struggling to raise enough money to give the schools any semblance of what they've been getting in the past. And they won't get it. The money isn't there. There's a huge deficit. That's Arizona. There's an even bigger deficit in California. And so the schools are going to suffer in terms of having adequate resources. And those are, it's not just Western states. Other states are also struggling right now. And those deficits aren't tied to civics education, but they'll affect it. We're not going to have as many resources as we formerly did. So I think part of the thinking today has to include how are we going to be innovative in providing the education, even though the budgets are being cut. And I don't know, frankly, how we encourage every state to get involved in making sure our young people learn how our government works. Some states have chosen not to make civics education or history requirements in the state anymore for high school. I mean, that's amazing to me, just amazing. Civics can be pretty dull when it's taught, but that's what we were talking about yesterday, how not to make it dull. But today, we want to be sure it is addressed in every school in this country, and that we don't have states that just skip it. And we cannot do that. We just cannot do that. The framers of our Constitution knew that they had created a different kind of a government than the world had experienced before, and they thought it was going to be a good form of government. They called it a republic if we can keep it. But they realized it was something different, and we've had a little experience now. We know what they created, and we know it can work. But how is it that so many states have decided we don't need to teach it? And we know that kids don't just absorb it, they have to learn it. So there's just no question but that we have to teach it. So how are we going to identify for everybody those states that have decided not to bother anymore, and how are we going to persuade them that they have to get back into the business of teaching students about how our government works? And we'll tell them we've already talked about how to do it innovatively, and we did that, and we can do that. So we have to get every state involved in the process. And I hope you'll talk about that and try to make available to all of us the identity of those that aren't now doing a job on this, so that we can all be part of persuading them to do so. And we have lots of approaches to teach. I push one in particular because I think it's good, and that's iCivics, but there are other ways too. I'll admit that, even though I think that's pretty innovative. But I think that this campaign has joined with the Annenberg Foundation and with the National Conference on Citizenship and Circle and other entities that want to now really get every state going, teaching it. And so that's what we have to do today. And there are lots of policymakers that address this in every state. And we have school superintendents, we have school boards, we have universities, we have media in every state. So how are we going to harness all these people and get them going on it? And I think that's what this group is going to discuss and see what to do. I like what John Dewey, the old advocate for civic education, had to say. He said, democracy must be reborn in every generation, and education is its midwife. Now that's a pretty good quote, and I think it's right. It's as valid today as when he said it. So we have to be aware that every generation has to be encouraged to deal with it, and we have to provide a lot of midwives, and that's what this group is trying to do. And I hope to work with all of you in one way or another to make sure this can happen. And I think there are many people in this room that can do that. Marge Rendell just came in, and she worked so hard in her state of Pennsylvania to make education about how our government works a reality in that state. And maybe she can share some techniques with us. But thank you all for being here and being part of this effort. And I want to be helpful any way that I can. And thanks for being here and doing this. I love it. So what are we going to learn today? Who's next?